I couldn't breathe.
Ozark can get pretty dark, so it's no surprise there are moments the cast struggled to film. From awkward animal encounters to emotional monologues, the show has been a roller coaster. Let's check it out. Number 1. Frying pans. Who knew, right? Julia Garner didn't realize she was bringing the weight of her character's burdens home with her. She said that for the entire first month of filming the first season,
it felt like I was getting hit by like a frying pan.
The energy among people behind the camera is not heavy though, so she's able to escape the headspace just a bit. She's found it easier to compartmentalize her life from her characters as they filmed the subsequent seasons, but it still takes her a bit to shake it all off. Number 2. A woman's gotta do what a woman's gotta do. Jant McTeer's waterboarding scene is more real than you might have thought. She refused to have a stunt woman stand in for her, and said it was a kind of fun yet exhausting experience. Imagine having a towel with cling film on your face for that long. You know what cling film is, right? That stuff you wrap your food with? Presumably, they used it so she's not, actually being waterboarded. While one hand was seen on camera, the other hand went unseen so that she could signal the crew if she needed a break. The whole bit took 3 hours to film. That's a long time to be damp and in the dark for. Number 3. For some, doing nothing would be an amazing thing. Not for poor Nelson Bonilla, though. The most challenging moment for him happened in season 3, during the therapy scene with Mary Louise Burke, who played Sue Shelby.
Have you ever had a dog before?
He was really excited to dive into the work and explore the character, when the director, Alec, pulled him aside and asked him not to express a thing. The challenge was, if we see any emotions from Nelson, you lose.
But I don't want it.
While the scene looks great on screen, Nelson wasn't feeling so great off screen. Poor Nelson. Not acting definitely won't win you an Emmy. Number 4. A completely realistic phobia. Julia Garner is so petrified of rodents, she couldn't even watch the movie Ratatouille. So when it came to filming for Ozark, she actually couldn't complete a scene. The one where her character needs to hold a mouse by the tail. It freaked her out so much, she went into a panic mode, and they had to get a hand double to do the shot. While a real mouse is a reasonable thing to not want to touch, she couldn't even hold a toy one. The worst of it was, the whole crew was laughing at her, which, not cool, guys. People were sending her pictures of mice for a month.
Even thinking about it just makes me cringe.
Number 5. They're scary and intimidating if you're not used to it. Julia Garner has basically no experience with guns, on or off screen, so her inexperience showed in their first take. When the gun went off while she was holding it pointing towards the ground, she screamed, and the weapon was so loud, shaky, and heavy that her wrist was actually hurting by the end of filming that scene. She was genuinely surprised it was as heavy as it was. Number 6. Taxi drivers must have the best stories. The initial reading of Tom Pelphrey's stream of consciousness taxi monologue had the actor in tears. It was written specifically with him in mind, and was written in one shot with no edits. Tom broke down into tears and struggled to keep reading because he couldn't see the words. He and the director avoided talking about the scene leading up to it because it was so stream of consciousness they didn't want directorial influence maybe pushing Tom the wrong way. The filmed scene went off without a hitch. They only needed 4 takes of it because the actors had the words so ingrained. And on the last 2 takes, the director asked him to just slow it right down. While the group watched it while it was still in editing, at first, everyone in the room was so blown away, you could hear a pin drop. That was quickly followed by a standing ovation.
I get it. Thank you.
Number 7. It's important to take a little me time. Carson Holmes could not have fun before the shooting. Preparation demanded bringing the energy way down. He even avoided talking to people.
There's no funness, kind of. I know that sounds bad, but...
He's not the only one, though. In order to de-stress and not get sick after the fact, the actors all needed to spend some time rebalancing themselves. Tom Pelphrey said at some point the body does not tell the difference between authentic emotions and those expressed through acting. He gets lots of sleep, does yoga, and walks his dog to shake the energy. Laura Linney likes to be alone leading up to a big moment, just to stay in the appropriate headspace. The last thing she wants is to let anybody down, and the stress of that is intense. She's talking about the kinds of scenes she says require an enormous amount of emotion, very quickly, under a tight technical requirement. Number 8. What is it with this show and water? Michael Mosely plays the preacher Chris Young in season 1, but he wasn't the first to land the role. Somebody else was initially cast in it, but they dropped out pretty much at the last minute. So within a couple of days, Mosely found himself in the role and had to fly out to join the cast and crew. For one particular shot, he continuously had to walk himself out into freezing cold water, shot after shot after shot. He was wearing a wetsuit beneath his clothes, but we're sure that didn't do much good. They only had 3 pairs of clothes, so every time they did a shot, he'd have to go get changed. So wardrobe would immediately start drying his wet clothes while he did another take. And don't worry, the real babies never touched the cold water. Number 9. No accent is easy unless it's your own. Julia Garner stayed in her Missouri accent for days to make sure it was totally ingrained for filming.
Just so I can be familiar.
This role was a struggle for her, mostly because her character, Ruth, is the exact opposite of her, which made it really hard to relate to Ruth and her circumstances. But of course, that didn't stop Garner from winning an Emmy for the role.
But Merle'd be happy to sell a slightly used for cash, would he not?
Number 10. Perhaps the exhaustion made the scene better? The hardest scene for Julia Garner was with co-star Laura Linney, dubbed the wolf scene. What made it so tough is it was the night after her big Emmy win, and she had to be up at 4:45 a.m. It was her biggest scene of season 3, and she couldn't help but think, well, it's all downhill from here.
Are you gonna do?
Number 11. The actors are on to greener pastures now. Jason Bateman really struggles with scenes where they had to kill off characters. Because that doesn't just mean the end of an arc for a character, it means the end of a job for an actor and a shift in dynamics on set. And he loves his co-stars, and not seeing them every day after spending all this time together is just straight up sad. Number 12. This one wasn't painful for the reason you might think. No, Jason Bateman still had all of his toenails when the day ended. But don't get us wrong, it was still painful. Not on his feet, but his face. They started with the close-ups because they knew what would happen if they did it the normal way. Bateman was going to blow out his voice screaming, and he totally did. So starting with those close-ups meant he was able to take it easy at first, and then really give it his all when they did the wide shots to close out the day.
My life is good.
It sounds like the cast all need to take a nice little trip to the spa and just relax a little, don't you think? Which of these stories shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching.